Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to my presentation for the fieldwork for the course European Times of Crisis. I have done a data analysis and I will introduce the subject. Um, I have I have thought of a research question since the climate crisis has increased and become bigger the last couple of years. Um, my question was if there would also be a rise in infringement procedures regarding climate action. Uh, for this, I have done an analysis on the database of infringement procedures of the European Commission. This can all be found on the site of the European Commission, and I've done an analysis on this. First of all, I will go into detail on what infringement procedures exactly are. The European member states and European Commission together have to make sure that compliance with the community law is met. So every year, a large number of directives and regulations, which are approved by the EU, they must be transposed into the national legislations of the member states. These are based on the core values of the EU, such as rule of law, democracy, respect for human rights, and uh, to make sure that these are met are important for several reasons. But most of all, since when they are not met, this has a negative impact on the citizens of the European Union. An example of this is the last couple of years there have been problems with rule of law in Poland. Some um, uh, judges have gone on strike to protest this. Also, judges of other European countries. And this is an example of when a member state does not follow the regulations of the European Union, how this can negatively affect its citizens. Um, in the last years, there have been efforts to establish a relationship between the Commission and the member states to limit the number of infringement procedures and to give member states sufficient time to comply. This in order to avoid a lot of bureaucratic conflicts, so to say. And this has had mixed results. The annual number of open procedures has fallen, but complaints and reports filed by citizens are constantly rising. And at the same time, member states seem to be having difficulty breaking with old habits, with the number of pending infringement procedures rising at the end of each year. Now, what happens before an infringement procedure? Um, the routes which lead to the opening of an infringement procedure, they vary and are different litigating parties. On the one hand, the Commission, they can do it through special investigations, but also citizens can do it through reports and petitions. And these complaints by citizens are also rising in number. On average, more than 3,700 complaints are received every year against member states for potential violations of community law. Now, there is something called the EU pilot mechanism, which is important to explain. Since after a complaint or internal investigations, the European Commission can decide to launch an EU pilot investigation, and this is meant to anticipate and resolve potential difficulties and conflicts without actually having to do an infringement procedure. Um, so this uh, this is meant to resolve the conflict without too much bureaucratic conflict. This is established by the Commission and the member states to exchange information and resolve problems concerning the application of EU law or the compliance of national law with EU law. And this is designed for the phase prior to the formal opening of an infringement procedure. And despite the fact that this tool has yielded plenty of fruit over the years, The Commission has recently stressed the need to make less use of the EU pilot in order to avoid adding more bureaucratic stages before an actual infringement procedure. So for this reason, in urgent cases, an infringement procedure can be launched without a prior EU pilot investigation. The Commission's new strategy can be seen when we look at specific data. The number of EU pilot cases went from 1,225 in 2014 to just 110 in 2018. Now we'll look into the data I have found, because after these phases, from the complaints and the EU pilot and the investigations, hereafter comes the actual infringement procedure. This is the first step of the process, which sees member states receive a formal notice under Article 258 of the Treaty of the Functioning on the Functioning of the EU. And the database of the European Commission, it shows that in total 19,659 cases have been handled and closed between 2002 and 2020. And 1,527 cases are still pending, so they are still open and waiting for a judgment or to be closed. Between 2006 and 2013, there have been 11,755 cases opened, and between 2014 and 2020, there have been 6,152 cases opened. So almost half of which happened 7 years before that. So there has been a significant decrease in opened infringement procedures in the last 14 years. All these infringement procedures are divided in several policy areas or departments, like categories. So for my research question, I searched by the policy area climate action. The first infringement procedures in the database of 2002, but the first for climate action was in 2006. So this was added later than the first infringements. In total, 177 cases have been opened in the Department of Climate Actions, which is a small amount considered how many cases there in general are. And you can also see a decrease in this. So 121 cases have been opened between 2006 and 2013, and only 56 cases have been opened between 2014 and 2020. You can see under this a list of how many procedures have been opened against which countries. They differ from 1 to 12, with 12 is the most by Poland, and the least one by Denmark. There doesn't seem to be a clear, obvious pattern in this, since it's kind of spread all over Europe, the countries which have many procedures and have few. Now, how is it possible that when the climate crisis seems to be growing bigger, there are less infringement procedures regarding climate action? This may be the result of three different possible factors I have come up with. The first is pretty obvious. It's possible that countries have become more obedient when it comes to climate action, but it seems there's no reason why all the countries should do this for no reason. The second option is there have been issued less infringement procedures in general, which would explain less procedures in this category, or the EU pilot mechanism works better than before and more conflicts have been solved through this mechanism. We've discussed in one of the first slides that the EU pilot mechanism has actually been used significantly less the last couple of years. So this option wouldn't work. We've also discussed that there have been a significant decrease in opened infringement procedures in the last 14 years. So while option one can be excluded and is still possible, the most viable option is option two. That the decrease in climate action infringement procedures is actually a result of less infringement procedures issued by the European Commission in general. So while the climate crisis seems to be growing bigger and more important in the popular opinion, um, this doesn't lead to more infringement procedures by the European Commission. And this was the answer to my research question and the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening to it. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me and I will answer them happily. Thank you.